we're gonna get started now. Whoop whoop. Welcome to our first Speakeasy of spring 2019. Yay! We're excited to have 4 readers today, and we have kind of a variety pack. We have nonfiction, fiction, and poetry, and a faculty reader. So it's a special treat. The first person that I'm going to introduce today is Joshua Palmer. Joshua Palmer would like you to know that it's okay, you're not alone. He too has been dreaming of all those pretty Victorian faces in the snow. He too has seen that tubercular boy prince come to him in the night, demanding warm milk and poems about dead flowers. He is so sorry for missing last month's sexless cocaine Friday on the beach, but will try his damnedest to be there this time, especially if you bring that marvelous lesbian friend of yours, Amani, or was it Joanne? Yes, he has surrendered to the plague of words, but it will all pan out quite well, he is sure. So please, take his hand, enter the wound. Josh Palmer.
Thank you, Tasha. That was so lovely. I know I was listed as the nonfiction. I thought about it for like a second, and then I decided not to, so we'll do poetry instead. All right. Homoerotica number 1, epistolary. Dear wing peeler, dear angel lobber, dear hieratic boom, we are gumption and hand grenades. We are opposition research. Dear cosmic prosthesis, dear antediluvianalia, we're satin and massacre, just a bathhouse burner. Dear burner phone, dear honeycomb, dear Coke bottle basher, it's the gown disease again, dear Gloria, dear thin Texas nerve crawl, dear Gloria, dear meatcraft, dear mouth crashed with birds, dear brain sick, dear tongue, dear succulent, dear cyclone, dear fidz fucker, dear thong, dear candy, dear icon, dear your teeth are in your mouth again. Tell me how discomfort is such useful information. Tell me when there are no more women here to hand us throats. This one is Self-Portrait in Tongues. The dirty endlessness of language keeps me drunk in the tub beneath the temple, and I have fallen down in the splash of it for the purpose of the show. Upstairs it is feast day, and the priests are gorged on linens and the calendar's meticulous carnage, but their silence won't stop doing Judas with brass knuckles to my world and skull. In this gaudy season, when God has shut his eye, when the illness in a name like Violet is simply out of my hands, I am reminded that I am nobody's lace lampshade, nobody's pump organ, no tarnished sugarcane spread on the kitchen floor, spicy and devout, nobody's cracked penitence, nobody's jelly cookies and tequila. I know I shouldn't pray over dead people or they'll write little poems that will scuttle into the light and be beaten, but I am culled by the utterance. In the bathwater, nobody's epiphany, no wrinkled psalm, nobody's sin, nobody's pincushion, not the buttered litanies kept in the round gold dish. I have missed a good deal of pageantry by being born into such loud and bruiseless light. The dirty endlessness of language keeps me crammed in the shaft beneath the temple and the dirt below. Nobody's milk teeth, nobody's steady congregation of one. This one's called Homoerotica number 3, Apologetics. Open question. The extent to which words hold their stories like cum dried in fur. Like when you said stage whisper, our only difference is how salt shuffles between our tongues as if this were all a matter of magnitude, not static build and breed. So here we are, laced with compounds and relics, laying glass in the road's bright mouth. Say it with me, sodium, color, hide. The boys back in Texas prayed like chemists, taught me desire as malleable once it reaches the right heat, like ink steamed and lifted from the page, like bent wrist and Bible, smooth retreat of my palm from your shorts. Or was it viscous? A devotion to be measured by that little metal ball run through cream. Quick, crush the crucible, then wait on our bitter pieces of burnt wine and bad luck. Do you remember tight, dry splotches marking every stuffed animal that you owned? How I would watch you watching me, getting you off on all that fallen, urgent cursive? And that's the exacto trouble of it. Pleasure as sharp hammer and bluff, as drilled thing, as dulcimer, as rubbed pixel pulp, as barely boys sprawled out in the dust sprouting femme and clang. I want to say something blister and break up all the same love until you are blasted shut again, trailing little charities and asylums. For me, the script drifts in shards, metric of all our twisted volume. Write it with me. Control X, Control C. But I am more nostalgic than a disease. Naturally for you, I spit on the word and the engine turns over, bleeding, caution. Caution. This one is Midnight Showing. Just peel back the light, bleary with translation. There are keys to these clout-knuckled kernel crunchers who scour this kingdom with an evil-eyed, wet passion for the code. Those B-movie magic girls scuttle to the beat-down night fight in the aisles. Every bright eye-lidded sucker lifts from the screen another limpid French boy draped in string and bugged-out silk confections like concessions, like confessions of the gold-throttled kids in the back going down. A boy watches tight air tang with lies grown large in the dark. It is late to be so young and in theft with a kitschy kind of wanting. All right. This one's about a trash can I ran into one day that said that it was private property and that I should not throw my dog shit in there. And it was 100% a personal attack on me. On refuse or the secret engine of history. I tried taking a walk, and still the trash cans are shouting, "This is private property, we do not want your dog shit." Another Thursday means all cops are bastards and the ritual of my safe red unspooling. Unspeakable anxiety about all my little presents molding in the closet, as if the very idea of being exquisite were lost to someone else's boyhood. I tried licking the dust off books and calling it food, but all the Catholic daughters just moaned discipline. Don't write it down or they'll stuff the cherries in your mouth and call you a hypocrite. Tell me again how you loved her first book of poetry, the one where she made all the wrong decisions about where to hack the angel, all lines across the belly drawn in poor taste. We are what the philosophers bickering outside the gas station call a plenum, or the fat dead weight of the star in your hand. I tried refusing everything thin and venal, but there's something about justice caught in my teeth. There I go again, posing as a statue of myself from room to room, saying systemic, as if I were in cahoots with something beautiful, as if I were trying to fit my mouth over that secret engine. Another Thursday means I hate this moment so much I am trying to savage it just right. I tried taking a walk, and still the public pools in winter drained to a dire white ceramic crisis. And this is the last one, little one, homoerotica number 6, Siphon. All I ever wanted was to be loved the way newspaper yellows, which is to say, don't touch me and stay out of the light. All I ever wanted was to be seduced. Thank you.
Willie Kinard III was born of South Carolina cricket songs. Poet, designer, singer, and Skittles enthusiast, he holds a Bachelor of Fine Arts from the University of South Carolina in studio art, minoring in art history. With penned work appearing or forthcoming in Glass, a journal of poetry, Crab Fat Magazine, The Shade Journal, and others. He is a co-editor of poetry at Hot Metal Bridge, currently obsessed with vocality, anthropomorphism, and methods of black queer survival in the South. Currently talking to the moon, somewhere he sees as being too close to Winterfell, Willie is an MFA candidate in the creative writing program at the University of Pittsburgh. Please welcome Willie.
Hello, beautiful people. How are you? Okay, so my poetics normally involves sound and vocality. So do not feel that you are required to solely snap. If you feel that you need to say something or respond back vocally, you can. This first poem is called Throw Honey to the Wind and Watch Bees Come Back. Short shorts draw droves of you boys I don't like. Your flat brims and gold-plated stingers to where the mirage of back bounces against my gapped thighs, where I will convince you at most I am just your flower. But trust, I don't lie well. Ain't never been dainty, simply long and splintered. For legs spread ajar have always made me feel uncomfortable, but I have made a habit of taking what I don't quite want. I throw honey to the wind and watch bees come back. Find gold leaf in the folds of me where petals I last stroke I ain't quite washed well. I'm sorry. I stopped believing in this type of lonely. Don't ask me, darling. I would like to think it does feel better with your hat on, knowing it will not give you sugar. It won't call you daddy. Tonight, that is not your name. Thank you. The sugar. I find the sweat of sugar awfully saddening. How the tongue bursts into tears at the sight of candied mandarins swimming in light syrup. They say we shouldn't eat things out of cans anymore. But in this tin is where I'm spooning out my joy tonight. Forgive me if I find it for only 89 cents. Some would call that a bargain. Or perhaps a steal. What good comes out of something so precious being bartered by someone so cheap? This isn't joy. I should be more explicit when I'm talking about my body. I have a habit of sugarcoating its indulgences when I can't apologize for what I put it in. The easy peel boys with orange undertones, the scent they bite at my neck and chest. My mother says, this is how men can become diabetic, ignoring the sugar until the sap catches up to us. Or did she say with us? I'm not sure if she means men or my father these days. They all tend to end in disappointment or bad teeth, hard grinning like they are truly still worth the risk. Thank you. The hills. Once, a man said my moaning evoked a stuck zipper. A stifled bubbling trapped beneath the seams, and only his diligence could succeed in freeing it. A penchant he swung below his belt, parched and pointed, though I recall, louder, was the name of the trill intent on swindling me out of my music when my body didn't quite sing anymore. Who teaches who how to fuck? The hills or the yodeler? Surely, beneath that ringing is the clatter of bugles only played once for wet birds and a weak nut. God, to the men that do lay lip to my body, now reddened and swollen between the hips, I ask, how do you blow a stitching and the pleasure not ring out? Is there no lark in the trumpet, no fanfare in the pipe? Thank you. So I've been thinking a lot about vocality, and a lot about ascension, and a lot about singing, because I happen to be a singer sometimes. But I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be high. This piece is called Of a Feather, and thinking of what it means to be high and dangerous. Of a feather. A murmuration is the collective noun for a group of starlings. Likewise, crows, when gathered, are known as a murder. In the nettled spaces of the pecan trees above my mother's house, a blackbird congregation, a word usually sung in churches, hums, planning its winter trip further south than Carolina. In my mind, I'm trying to figure out why murmur is saved for the starlings, but not other beasts just as risky. Once, I used the term to describe a clamor of white men, a contrast against the boys I knew shot out the sky for making noise. Why is a flock of black folk known as a trouble? How is it that only choirs of starlings are said to murmur, similar to how only we are ever said to be articulate, as if what is loosed from our beaks is never thought to be clear? Perhaps the fogginess in this thinking is how a pair of wings found themselves inscribed on the arms of my younger brother, a call to fly without a shriek of crows ever erupting from his mouth. Today, a blackbird feather fell from the sky, and I, in turn, lifted to replace it where it might sing clearly again. Thank you. The Cicadas, an ode to home. The preacher rises, polyphony, modulation, jitters, cricket, Tony gestures. The choir inhales, grass whistles, guitar swells, clouds saunter in. The choir soars, tambourine flails, spirit surges, cattails shimmy, fireflies dance, the choir moans, another key change, clouds roll on their heels, grass warbles, clouds leap, lone firefly dancer blazes the aisle. Counterpoint, the choir riots, tambourine looses a bell, spirit looks around. Decrescendo, the guitar murmurs, cricket Tony coos, cattails whisper, grass rattles, firefly pants, clouds part, tambourine shivers, spirit exhales, stillness, cricket Tony kicks, the choir watches, white sheet descends, unison, fire. Thank you. As I'm thinking about home, I figured it would be appropriate to end on some of the things that are closest to me. So this last piece is about my mother, who I never write about. But it's called Hiccups. Mom taught me how to change a tire the fall before it got real cold one October. On the plot of dirt, the pole beans we call Babel spiraled from, where our boozy station wagon sat after hobbling home and passing out in the backyard. And in part, I have never not known women's work. For the women I sprouted under learned to make do without a man the same way clownfish change sex when a man is not present, but become just as lethal to make sure the oil gets changed. Which is to say, I'm talking with my hands again, as my mothers have had more calluses than mine, and sometimes sound softer And the attendant cops an attitude with her, and we really need this extension on the late fee, even when some days I'm sure she wishes I weren't as much like her. Which is to say, arthritis is the remnant left when we say things we don't mean. And her wrists get stiff from yelling, but the blisters on me she still tries to tend to, softly whispering, hold still, peroxide, witch hazel, feeble curses that someday I won't look for the same men that she once cared for. And Babel, the tower of beings we sang life into, won't crack under the thunder of God, because we take pride in these few yards of soot we snatched fruit from, and learned to make dust a place of peace in. And I found my way back to the blooms my ears first leaked nectar over, and we wove one tongue, or grief, or prayer, or scratching, or dialect from, and we bless this space, our plot of dirt, nursing home for Boozy the retired wagon, for the two of us can stalk more beans soon, for the losses that we have buried, for the 2 years I have been home, for our hands hiccup much less now, and for the inevitable growing that we are sure to do here. You've all been beautiful. Thank you.
Andrew is a writer from Pittsburgh. His interests include beer, books, and basketball. And that's about it. Please welcome Andrew.
Hello.
Hi.
How's everybody? I was inspired by the theme today, love, and so I brought in an essay about an unusually bad breakup. It's called Ce n'est pas une pipe. Or it's called something like that. I don't actually know how to pronounce the French. It was one of those wine and cheese ordeals. I'm not the type to know, but if I had to guess, I'd say the whole thing was very likely tasteful. The host's residence rose up, like so many did in that pristine corner of the Pacific Northwest, at the end of a winding pine and redwood-lined road, like a Frank Lloyd Wright fever dream. Through the foyer was a 2-story glass wall window overlooking an idyllic little valley, home to a glistening pond so perfectly dimpled into the landscape it seemed sky-touched by the thumb of God herself. The appliances were blinding chrome, the furniture was referred to as decor, and the throw pillows were so soft I blushed like a pimpled teenager just to brush up against them. The bathroom smelled nice. I felt terribly out of place and immediately set to getting as drunk as possible, as discreetly as possible. I remember standing near a mantelpiece and talking with the host, a functional stranger, someone who I had just been introduced to but shortly lost their name in my ambient hum of anxiety and intemperance. She was short, witty, and likely could have taken me in a fight. The occasion of the party was her recent return from a 4-month cross-country bike expedition. In many ways, she was reflective of the gaggle of older women I met during my 2-week stay on the Washington coast. I was 20, visiting Hannah, my partner at the time, and her family, staying at what was ostensibly a house, but what might be better described as an estate. Every morning I'd watch Hannah exercise her show-jumping horses, and the evenings were spent entertaining guests or being entertained as guests at other estates. I don't think I met more than 2 husbands, but they were always being referred to, offboarding on business or pleasure trips in exotic-sounding and faraway locales. The wives certainly weren't forlorn, however. They planned and participated in galas, benefits, and fundraisers. This was when I came to understand big-budget philanthropy as a social exercise, not an altruistic one. And as a hobby, all were age-range competitive in some sort of tortuous endurance sport. Lots of distance runners and skiers and climbers. Everyone was visiting someone or preparing to travel someplace else. They had short, spunky haircuts of dazzling artificial color and beautiful, intelligent pets that followed them everywhere. I had next to nothing in common with any of these people, and talking to them nightly was an intimidating task. Even still, I'd like to think I wasn't showing any nervousness. At 20, I'd begun developing the coping mechanisms that have carried me into later life. I know how to white-knuckle the spine of a wine glass to stop my hands from shaking, And when daunted by a large or swarthy group, I tend to become reflexively verbose and polite. Though, unfortunately, I've never learned how to quiet my dyspeptic guts, all grumbling, shifting, and whimpering like a dog in a canoe. In any case, even if I wasn't quite rising to the level of witty repartee, I was conversing genially enough with the host for it to be bearable. I don't know what prompted it. I might have fetched us both another round or told a well-received joke, but for some reason our conviviality warmed to the appropriate temperature, and she, to my abject terror and grumbling gastric distress, took out her phone and showed me a picture of her son. Yes, here he is. We visited Malaysia last summer. Nearly a decade after the party, I still have the same immediate stiffness when talk about family comes up. It's an exchange I find insufferable. Crankiness like this rarely emerges in a void, and sure, I admit to a chip on my shoulder. There are things I don't want to discuss. But within this nice-making genre of small talk, I've always found the photograph trick to be especially grating, and visiting that night with a minor aristocrat, I felt, more than ever, the sense of being sold something. The way she displayed for me her son, the way she might a painting on the wall. I'm not alone in thinking this ostentation is a particularly bizarre cultural artifact. Sandra Gardner at the University of Maine spent much of her career as a sociologist on family albums, comparing the same 20 photo books along class lines in multiple published papers. Her theses confirm the lessons I've learned out in the field. The rich and the middle class are more diligent in their record keeping and tend to be more performative in their habits. They pose more frequently, the number of family members at photographed events are higher, and there's a higher probability in rich and middle class photos of accompanying editorializations, fun at the park, and so on. I've read a few dozen of these in similar papers. While some of them are clad in the impenetrable language of the academy, most are easy reads because they're so recognizable. All it takes is the proper context. The critical theorist rambling about the mantelpiece as a nexus of collective memory is simply calling on you to consider those two cheery Fletchers, that family who takes turns as they spin a yarn, riffing off their photo at Disneyland. And then he, and then we tried, but then she. To endure long-term relations with these families is to see the same pictures again and again, and listening to the same stories instead. Similarly, the big words about photographs as expressions of socioeconomic anxiety are easy to consider when talking about those parents who disown their children, either legally or spiritually. I've known families who would whisk the shot of the son off the coffee table after learning about his homosexuality. Susan Sontag, in her similar On Photography, made note of this phenomenon. Through photographs, each family constructs a portrait chronicle of itself. The photos are part of a reflection of what is, in part what a family wishes to be. Saddled with a certain kind of family history, I cannot compete in this jockeying for social status. I can't even line up to race. It's precisely why, then and now, my spine snaps rigid and my face instinctively sulks. It's the dread associated with the oblivious smile from the host, their blasé manner as they switch the focus onto me and mine. So, tell me about your family. I never have any suitable answer prepared for this line of inquiry. Most often I'll mumble something about my father being a lawyer and my mother a school teacher, but it always seems affected, and the recipient of this half-lie can tell something is off. Like a student stuttering through an explanation of a book they've never read. The inadequacy is equally painful for me as it is for everyone listening. Out among those majestic redwoods, though, the question took on even greater weight. The night of the party, two things were becoming clear. One, these routine visitors and visitations were not idle social calls. There was some sort of calibration being determined, it seemed, an attempt to measure my suitability for Hannah, for her family, for her friends and friends of family. To be asked about my next of kin was a logical progression in the conversation, fair enough. But it was also a chance for present company to sniff out my stock and peerage. Or maybe that's not quite right. They weren't a cabal of nobles trying to throw out the peasant, even if it occasionally felt like it. But something was up. We'll see, her mother says across the room. We don't know about him yet, just loud enough for me to hear. Two, and this was the realization that really hit home, whatever test or evaluation was underway, I was failing at it spectacularly. Hannah and I had met in college, drawn to one another due to recent tragedy. Both of our fathers had just passed. Our coping mechanisms were very different. I did everything I could to avoid thinking about it, while she seemed to luxuriate in the woe, often mentioning it to strangers within minutes of meeting them. A cancer had blown through her father in a few short months, and mine, well, I didn't want to talk about it. By drawing this contrast, I don't mean to say that one method of grieving was any more or less ostentatious or somehow better than the other, but instead to illustrate how we found each other strange, maybe even faintly exotic. I was intrigued by her interfamily devotion, and maybe she with my lack of just that. Every night she found time to call and talk with her mother and brother. They struck me as quaint and esoteric, like something people did in the 40s. Aside from some aunts who wouldn't have been surprised if I rang to ask for money, I couldn't think of many relatives to call to begin with. During a long stretch of our relationship, I didn't even have a phone. So after almost a year of dating, Hannah invited me out to stay with her family. She arranged for me what sounded like a cushy summer job. I would get paid to shovel horse shit, occasionally house sit and pet sit when various friends went out their revolving doors of family and adventure, and generally be a compensated hand wherever needed. Aside from the money, though, there was also the excitement of being with those people at the other end of her calls. Hannah and I were in love. We were in a phase where we talked almost exclusively in soaring possibility about our hypothetical children, the geniuses they'd be, the places we'd go, things we'd do. Her brother was gay and wanted children, and Hannah had promised one day to be a surrogate for him and his eventual partner. It would be a strange clan, we told each other, but a wondrous one. Everyone caring for the next, the connections between us all unbreakable. They had ties, deep ties I'd never really seen before, and in talking and dreaming with Hannah, I got caught up, maybe even intoxicated, with the notion that I had become enmeshed myself without even meeting them and their family too. I still don't know what I did wrong. I don't even know if I did anything wrong. One weekend, her mother casually asked if I had any connections in the area. Maybe I didn't rake the mulch of the horse pen well enough. Her brother started mentioning all his free airfare miles. Maybe, was it the night I tried to help with dinner and the onions were closer to caramelized than sauteed? I don't know, I'll never know. But the morning of that last visit, that last party, I woke soundlessly and motionlessly, my head still on the high thread count pillow, and watched over her shoulder for 15 minutes as Hannah sat at her desk, diligently building a portfolio of suitors on an online dating site. That usually gets a laugh.
Your audience.
I last heard from her about a year ago. The family is busy operating a restaurant in the French Alps under the shadow of Mont Blanc, the same mountain that Hannah's mother climbed, heroically and through a snowstorm, to deposit her late husband's ashes at the peak, as per his will. So, the host wanted to know about my family. I was filled to the throat with expensive white wine and embittered with the knowledge that Hannah and I were shortly to be no more. Feeling brave, I gave in to a mirthful fit of honesty. My father murdered my mother and killed himself in prison. There it was. It was not the first time I'd said it out loud, but it was the first time I had managed to say it so succinctly. And blessed the host's reaction, something I still smile about, that a mixture of fascination and disgust, as if I'd pirouetted, bent over, and lit a long and loud fart on fire. The soiree didn't last long after that. The end of my stay with Hannah followed, and thus our relationship came to a dumb and abrupt end. It felt like a bad pun, or the "that's all, folks," capping a Looney Tunes episode. I'm happy now, so I'd like to think. I don't spend as much time around people who equate their personal success with that of their genetic kin. It took a long time, but I no longer loathe myself for being an orphan, for thinking I carry a poison in my blood. I had to learn to forgive that simple crime of needing affection. I didn't belong in their pictures, and that's fine. But wouldn't it have been so much simpler if I could have just snuck into Hannah's family, like a lecher creeping into the girls' locker room? It didn't help that they had money. I'm very American in my preoccupation with have and have not, especially when it comes to that odd intersection of family and wealth. But the real hurt was being pushed out of my imagined collective. The real hurt was the squashing of the naive future Hannah and I had hatched for ourselves. To this day, when I get too drunk or too sad, my downward spiral of thoughts tends to start with that family. Maybe the only thing she was interested in to begin with was all that tragedy. Maybe all you have going for you are, paradoxically, the bad things that have happened to you. Then, of course, the reflexive humor kicks in. I can make fun of myself with my floundering and my flame farting and how I was so smitten with people who took unpronounceable wine so goddamn seriously. And who had a wine cellar? Who even does that? But there are times when I can't keep up with it. There are times when the jokes don't do their job and don't push away the things that they should, when the lifetime of rationalizations and logic and all the common sense in the world can't save me from the simple, childlike fears I don't think will ever go away. This is not for you, they don't want you, and even if they did, you don't deserve it. You're strange and your difference, they follow you like a stench. It's your fault, whatever it is. That thing inside you endeavor to pin down and name and get some power over, but can never catch. It's your fault, and it is why you are alone. Thank you.
Last but not least, I'm going to introduce our faculty guest today, Irina Reyn. She has 3 novels, What Happened to Anna Kay, The Imperial Wife, and Mother Country. We just went to her opening read yesterday. It was great.
Sorry, I didn't know I was supposed to have a whimsical bio, or I'd forgotten about it. I would have gone into ping pong and all sorts of other things. But I didn't know, so I'm sorry, it's very boring. So, thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be among you and hear you. It's a rare treat. I'm actually skipping office hours just to be here. They're not missing much, right? The book came out yesterday. Here's what it looks like. I'm going to read from a different part just for fun, just to try it out. I'm still sort of getting to know the book in print. I'll just read very short, just a very short chapter. You don't really need to know anything except the protagonist is named Nadia, and she's a senior care attendant, or she works for kind of a lecherous Russian Jewish man. She's from Eastern Ukraine, and she divides the job with another woman named Aneta, who is from Western Ukraine. So you may know there's a bit of a conflict here. So it's called The Western Ones, and it's Brooklyn, May 2014. When she arrived at her second job at Grisha's, Nadia heard the fierce sound of clanging cookware. This meant Aneta was angry again, and the transition would be a headache. To hear her tell it, Aneta hated being a home attendant, detested old people and their smells, found Grisha a dissolute lecher, and couldn't stand dirty Brooklyn sidewalks. Their employer, VIP Senior Care, punished her with the occasional overnight shift, which she attributed to pro-Russian biases in former Soviet Union immigrant circles, as if there was a Putin-led conspiracy to push ethnic Ukrainians out of the most desirable elderly caretaking jobs in America. She was angry for a million other reasons Nadia could not even begin to fathom. "So, Your Majesty, waltz in at 10 like nothing," she huffed as soon as Nadia turned the key. Lately, Aneta insisted on speaking English exclusively, even though none of them had a decent grip on it. "I know late." Nadia pointed to the clock on her phone. It said 8:58. She heard Grisha call out in Russian from the catacombs of his bedroom. "Thank God you've come to save me from this monster. It seems your beleaguered but proud country of Ukraine has elected a new president, and now this one has become insufferable." Aneta was a ruddy woman from some village outside of Berdichev. Stocky and square, she dressed in floral muumuus, scraggly hair tightly pulled back in a bun the size of a child's fist. Her face could be vastly improved, Nadia thought, by just a few more teeth. She wagged her finger at Nadia. "Speak English, English, with me, always English. Or if you like Ukrainian, you should be speaking your mother tongue. Are you not Ukrainian, you separatist Putin lover?" This was not the time to explain to Aneta that though Nadia's mother tongue was Russian, she prayed every day that both Western Ukrainian separatists and Russians would just leave her hometown in Eastern Ukraine alone. How was Grisha night? How could it be? I was trapped with this idiotka. Grisha wheeled himself into the living room. He whistled, looking her up and down. "My, you are the height of female beauty, Nadia Andreevna. Your hair is magnificent today. You look like a firebird. Or at least Tatiana from Evgeny Onegin, young and sprightly." "Thank you, Grisha." He ignored Aneta, who was gathering her things on the countertop and shoving them into a beige handbag. At one time or another, Nadia glimpsed empty yogurt containers, sweets they were forbidden to bring inside the home of diabetics, earplugs, stockings, used tissues, nasal spray, a change of underwear. When Aneta was this worked up, her hands shuddered. In her attempt to shovel possessions back into her purse, a cell phone slipped out of her fingers and crashed onto the linoleum floor. "See what you people did?" "Let me help you," Nadia said. Before the Maidan protests began, before Yanukovych was ousted, before the Lugansk People's Republic declared their independence from the rest of Ukraine, Aneta didn't protest that Nadia and Grisha spoke Russian. Aneta's own Russian was quite fluent, if thickly accented. Back then, they all communicated fluently, imparted important information about their shifts, went over the medication schedule, and even enjoyed overlap by watching addictive Russian reality television shows on the Russian cable station together. But as the war continued to rage and news of the election was imminent, Agneta began pulling away as if their very existence was an affront, demanding they all speak Ukrainian. And what was poor Grisha supposed to speak? He was from St. Petersburg, and he emigrated with a good-for-nothing son at the age of 64. Was he to learn a new language? And what about Nadia, growing up in ethnic Russian enclave in Lugansk, Oblast neighborhood? On the floor, the cell phone's cracked face showed a picture of an attractive girl, Lariska's age, framed by blonde curls. She's beautiful. Is this your daughter? You not touch, nothing. Agneta wrapped her bruised phone in a scarf. She made a final sweep of the apartment and shoved open the front door. Bye, Agneta. Have a nice day, Nadia said in English, through her teeth. The breaking of a wave cannot explain the whole sea, Grisha intoned. He was always displaying his erudition by quoting great Russian writers. Agneta froze, a hand on the knob. The back of her neck practically sizzled with rage. Just be quiet, Nadia ordered Grisha. Just let her go. What do you mean, old man, huh? What are you saying? Two older women were slowly making their way across the hallway to the elevator. The one with the cane complained about a granddaughter that never called to ask after her health, and the other one with the rolling walker had an entirely different monologue going about the deteriorating quality of produce. They were naturally conversing in Russian. Agneta lingered in the doorframe, but then as they listened to the pure Moscow cadences disappearing down the hall, she seemed to reconsider. Before Nadia knew what happened, Agneta traversed the room and slapped her across the face. The shock of it was the initial sting, Agneta's ringed, creased hand at her skin, but then the pain initiated in her chest, up her neck, and exploded in the place of attack. Her eyes filled with tears immediately, her very sockets burning from the heat of it. Slava Ukraini, you traitor, Agneta said, noting her surprise and anger with satisfaction, and stormed out. They could hear the stomp of sensible heels against linoleum floor. No, Grisha clucked. However stupid a fool's words may be, they are sometimes enough to confound an intelligent man. What, she said? It was a question aimed toward the universe at large. The outlines of the room were losing its focus. I could kill her. That's Gogol, in case you'd like to be more cultured. I prefer my women cultured, especially before we undertake the most beautiful act a man and a woman can enjoy together. Grisha wheeled himself to the cabinet where his medication was stacked. Myriad orange bottles for every imaginable ache. Back home, old men were being blown up in daylight. Here, old men took pills to marvel at their erections. Shall I take the blue one now, or shall we be patient until after lunch? She tried to gather herself, bring her own anger under control. The apartment was cleaned in a hostile manner. Items of contradictory functionality all whisked together in messy little piles. Candy, pills, and glass cleaner and room spray, old photographs and bills. She wished she could yank that Agneta back here and punch the rest of her teeth out. I'll show you my mother tongue. But she had dropped the letter to the senator in the mailbox only yesterday, and without this job, the official, documented nature of this job, Lariska would never be allowed to come. She found the nursing uniform in her tote and slipped her arms through it. I don't understand that miserable woman. In the best country imaginable, and she's not happy. Well, would you be happy if you had that face? Nadia suppressed a smile. Let's go breathe some fresh air, shall we? The mirror displayed a thick head of copper blonde hair in desperate need of coloring, a glistening eyelashes, inflamed cheek already swollen. Looking down, she saw that Grisha had reached up into the freezer and folded some ice cubes into a waffled kitchen towel. Speaking of face, go ahead, press it, he said, wheeling over. Bring the swelling down. Our magical lovemaking will just have to wait. Thank you.